Welcome back to another episode of That's Business. Today's guest is Kara Desmond. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by the clutter in your home or office? Disorganization can place a burden on your time, money, and inner peace. That's where Kara and her team of professional organizers come in. As the owner of Utterly Uncluttered, she's passionate about helping people improve the functionality within their spaces and reclaim their time and energy. As a self-proclaimed lover of stuff who also strongly dislikes visual clutter and overabundance, living in homes with limited space posed a challenge that she had to learn to overcome. Kara, I'm so excited for this topic as someone who is a little disorganized herself. Growing up, were you always this super organized person, or what was your air quote, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, I definitely don't think I was always super organized. I think that's something that I learned more of over time. I'll start by saying I was never a very messy person. Like, I don't look back on my childhood and think my parents had a hard time getting me to clean my room. I don't really honestly remember that far back, but I don't think that was ever my nature. I definitely grew up having my own file cabinet, like a file drawer, which is probably one of the most. So if that gives you like any information that you need to know, I guess we can start with that. But I actually wanted to be a doctor.
Oh,
which I quickly changed gears after one chemistry class in college and decided against it. It was just not for me. So that really was the end of that dream. But I definitely did not know that organizing was even a career that I could pursue.
so what did we end up going forward with in college? And I believe you have your MBA too. So how did you kind of progress and decide? And of course, I still always say how you're supposed to decide at 18 years old what to do for the rest of your life is wild to me. So what did you kind of progress with after that?
Sure. So I think that it's so terrible that we are expected to know what we're supposed to do for the rest of our lives at 18. I don't think it's practical.
Mm-mm.
You don't have any sort of worldview or knowledge of anything. I mean, some people definitely do. I had no real world experience in much of anything outside of school before college started. So like I said, I started out wanting to be a doctor. So I started out pre-med. After 1 or 2 semesters, I pivoted and I decided I wanted to go into psychology, which was, it's an aligning career path with being a doctor and also with what I'm doing now, ironically. But again, I decided against psychology. So I switched my major again, went into HR, decided that also wasn't for me.
We love it.
I switched my major again and landed with marketing. So I switched my major 4 times in college. I still graduated on time, mind you. I was really cognizant of staying on top of it, even switching my major that many times. So yeah, I pivoted from wanting to be a doctor to marketing and wound up with a sales job. So yeah, I have been all over the place with what I wanted to do and still wound up in something entirely different.
I want to give you credit for that because there's so many people that go through college, go through the motions. And then, they even call me and they're like, hey, I've wasted the last 10, 15, 20 years of my life and I want to do something that I've always been passionate about. So I think that's huge. And that helps you kind of be successful in your career and starting a business while you have the energy before, we're in our 50s or 60s. And some people do start businesses then. But I feel like for you too, that's, doctorate, psychology, HR, marketing, they are kind of like a linear path though. A lot of those have some good crossover.
Sure.
So we end up in sales. How long were we in sales and what were you selling?
Yeah, so I was selling consumer packaged goods and I was in sales it was almost 8 years.
Wow.
And it was a great start to my career, but it was not for me forever. And I had been going on these really long walks, to be completely honest, listening to podcasts similar to yours. And I was very inspired by entrepreneurs and the things that they had overcome in their lives and the struggles and the successes that they saw. And I saw so much of that in something that I wanted to pursue. And honestly, it was just a series of so many podcasts before I felt motivated to want to start my own business. So, really like they say that when your body is moving, your mind is moving. And I feel like that's so true because it can really clear your head.
So you were doing hot girl walks before it was popular to do the hot girl walk. I like
Exactly. It wasn't a thing at the time. It didn't have a name.
You were a trendsetter. That's amazing. And of course, as we know, starting a business is extremely scary. It's like, what do I register the business as? How do I get a bank account? So what were the steps you took to get this? Because I feel like I've talked to a lot of people that are like, I could never start a business, and the logistics of it's very easy to do, but you seem like someone that you take action and you're very much like, I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to do it. So at what point did we decide to start this business and kind of launch this? Because this is huge.
It's such a good question. I think that getting started is one of the hardest parts because you just don't, if you don't have somebody in your life that is also a business owner, you don't really know where to start and you don't know who to ask. And there's not one simple resource on the internet that can tell you how to start it. So I actually years ago had an Etsy shop where I was decaling items and making personalized things for things like people's bachelorette parties and stuff like that.
Cool.
It was more of a side hustle and it was fun. It wasn't making me much money, but I learned the importance of creating a separate bank account and saving all of my receipts. Really the basics, right? The things that you want to start foundationally as a business owner. But it was so small and honestly such a drain on my time and my energy. And I wasn't really seeing much from it. And so I ended up closing that anyways. But that was really something that gave me the confidence that, hey, I could do this. You know, this isn't anything crazy or scary or outrageous. I just don't want to hold a lot of inventory because what works from that is it takes up a lot of space. And if you're operating out of your house and you don't like clutter like me, that's something that is not ideal. But yeah, so that's honestly, that gave me kind of like a little intro myself.
I mean, the difference between product-based businesses and service-based businesses, I mean, you have a lot of overhead when you're product-based, as you know. So we closed the Etsy shop. Where did the idea to start Utterly Uncluttered come from?
Yeah, so I was actually on Indeed looking at different jobs that were available. And I came across Organizer and I thought, how cool is that? You know, I think I was cleaning out a junk drawer as I was scrolling and at the same time. And I was like,
oh, you're supposed to clean those out? That's just where everything goes to die. What?
Right, exactly. But we all have them. Everyone has one. I have yet to be in a house where there's no junk drawer. So I thought, how cool is that? I had no idea that A, this was something people did for a living, and B, that other people were looking for help with it. And, you know, I was a big fan of shows like back in the day, if you remember, Clean House. I think it was TLC. It was my favorite show when I was probably 13 years old. And, you know, I had just watched, I think season 1 of Marie Kondo had just come out. Tidying up with Marie Kondo. And I'd watched the show and loved it. But for whatever reason, it never crossed my mind that that was somebody's job, right? That was in my mind a TV show and an entertaining one. And it helped a lot of people. But you know, really making that connection of that's something that I've seen before and that's something that I could actually do. It was this perfect alignment of that's what I love to do. That's a de-stressor for me. If I was going to start a business, I already knew that's about myself. I was going to start a business. It had to be something that I enjoyed doing in my spare time and made me feel like I was helping people and that I would feel good about it and really, you know, wanted to spend my time doing it. So that was something that I was really drawn to. And I thought to myself, I wonder if that's a business that I could start myself. So I got a couple books. I started reading about it and what it would entail to start your own business, how expensive it might be. And I just really, you know, talked to my husband about it and he's like, you should go for it. So yeah, that's really honestly where it started. And I started organizing for friends and family to see if it was something I was even good at doing for somebody else, see if I liked doing it in practice. And that's where it really began.
Wow. And I actually did the same thing where you got to practice, like the friends and family of just practicing with them for any service you offer, I think is so huge because love them. But sometimes I know at least my old school Italian family is a little too honest with me. So I'm like, oh, if I could deal with their feedback, I could do anything. That's how I look at it. But that's great. So we launched in 2019. I mean, go through the pandemic. So walk us through, I mean, how that happened. I don't know why 2019 is like the year everyone started there, or at least a lot of people in my network. I was also 2019. I took it full time. So I don't know why that's like the magic year for a lot of people, but tell me about that.
Well, that was scary. It was a scary time, you know, going into a pandemic a year after starting. So I'd really only been in business for a year. when the world shut down. So I wasn't going into people's houses, nor did anybody want me going into their house during that time. So actually, that was the most pivotal time for my business. So, year one is very scary for any business owner, right? You have no idea what you're doing and how to market your business and how to grow your business. You're just kind of throwing things at a wall and hoping they stick. And
Amen.
a year in, the world shuts down. And quite honestly, I thought it was really doom and gloom in my mind. I thought that this is it. I'm going out of business. What am I going to do for money? How am I going to do this? And, I think it honestly took probably the first month of having to sit at home and try to figure out what to do until I really started to settle into, okay, this might be the new norm for a long time. So I have to figure out how to pivot. At first, I was, we were on social media connecting with other organizers, trying to figure out what people are doing. And, virtual organizing became a bit of a bigger thing during the pandemic, right? We were offering our services online. So you're doing a video chat like, that you and I are doing right now. And we're essentially coaching our clients through what is holding them back from getting rid of certain items in their house. They're showing us your space. You're talking about the items similar to how you would do face-to-face in their house without actually moving anything for them. So it's, hold up this shirt. Tell me why you're still holding on to it. Do you want to keep it or get rid of it? And then, make a donation pile, and coaching them through the action steps to take. It was very challenging. A lot of people hire us because they don't want to actually do that, right? They want us to come in and help them clear out their space, and they're busy. So, it was a really big struggle doing virtual organizing. It definitely is not something I carried out much further beyond the pandemic, but it helped me through the pandemic for a little bit. And that time spent at home really allowed me to take time sitting that I hadn't been doing for the last year, right? I was running for a year straight. I would come home. I would, try to figure out what I needed to do for the next day. I would market myself. I was spending hours on social media. I was running around to the Container Store and Target and whatnot. I would probably work, 12 to 16-hour days and then get up the next morning and do it all over again. So I didn't have time to sit and think, how am I going to pivot and grow my business, right? So that time period forced me to sit and think, okay, where am I at? Where do I want to be? And how can I pivot? And what can I do if the world opens back up, which I was assuming it was going to at some point, what's the next step? So by the time the pandemic was over, I was able to hit the ground running because I'd been spending every single day I was getting up to do that. And yeah, that honestly, it was instrumental in where I'm at now. I think that time period, which I don't think, is always offered. Right? It was an excuse to sit at home and get stuff done.
Well, and the rule of thumb is you're supposed to work on your business, not in your business as the owner and entrepreneur. So I'm definitely guilty of not working on the business as much. So that's great time because, even just doing that strategic plan and being forced to quite literally sit there and you can't do anything. Okay, so we grow this business. We're in 2025 now. How do you get your clients? And I know you do commercial and at home, but what's kind of like a scope of clients you work with and who's kind of like, I don't want to say the ideal client, but like your favorite projects to work on? Let's say that.
Yeah, we work primarily with busy families and working individuals that are too busy to keep up with general everyday clutter. As you know, clutter can accumulate quickly. It takes very little time to accumulate. And the longer you go without going through it, the longer it can take to get it under control. So really where we see things fall apart is when people are working full time and they might have kids, right? So we work with a lot of people that are just in that situation. It's just everyday families that don't have the time to keep up with it and get systems in place because they can spiral out of control so quickly if a system isn't set up initially. I like to say everything should have a home. All the stuff in your house should have a home. And if it doesn't, that's when clutter really starts to accumulate because you don't know where to put those things. And so it becomes one more decision you need to make at the end of the day. And that's where we start to burn out.
Oh my gosh. So when you go in, let's take a busy family. What's kind of like the first thing you're looking for? Do you do consultations or how does it work to work with you?
Yeah, we'll start with a call so we can get an understanding of what they're looking for help with and make sure it's a good fit for both of us, for them, make sure that we're a good fit for them and make sure that we can help them with what they're looking for help with. From there, we can set up a consultation where we come to their house, see their space. We get a little tour. We will take measurements. If they want shopping done, we'll do shopping for them and bring all the products to the house with us, or the house or the business, on the day of organizing. And we like to schedule everything out so they know when to expect us. And, if it's something that is a smaller project and we don't need an in-home consultation, we can, depending on the space, even provide an estimate from photos.
And would you say is the smallest project you've worked on and the largest project you've worked on?
The smallest can be something like, say, a entryway closet, right?
Oh, okay.
Small, right? And large, we do whole homes, or we've done even warehouses for businesses, but that's large for us, right? But I would say where you would normally see us if you're considering a large project would be a whole house.
Okay. And what are some tips you recommend for whether it's business owners, busy families, things like that? What are some easy tips people can do to keep themselves organized outside of everything should have a home? So you could use me as an example, because I told you before we started recording, my desk is an absolute nightmare right now as I'm transitioning and changing things up. But what are some tips to get started or get motivated to get things done, we can say?
I would recommend starting small and setting a timer for yourself.
Ooh.
Because sometimes the reason I think people don't get started in the first place is because it feels like a never-ending task, and it's so overwhelming that they look at the big picture of how much needs to get done rather than what can I get done with the 5 minutes that I have right now, right? So I think setting a timer and putting it on your calendar, even for somebody who's busy and feels like they don't have time, sometimes you just need to make it a priority as if it's an appointment for yourself. You always hear people say you need to schedule time to work out. You need to schedule time for yourself. You need to schedule time to just do something for you. And if you can put it in your calendar for, a 30-minute time block and just go, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to tackle this paper piling up on my desk. Whatever you get through in 30 minutes, great. It's more progress than doing nothing. And you might even find that you're more motivated once that timer goes off to keep going, because it doesn't feel so overwhelming once you've already started.
I also, because I have severe ADHD, and I bought myself an ADHD planner, and it was one of the tips in there was, so I like the timer. It was listen to your favorite album or make a list of songs. And I was like, oh, that was helpful. So that was another one of a album, and same thing to once it's done, you feel more motivated to do that. That's great. So have you had a lot of people that, okay, you help them out and then they kind of resort back to old habits? Does that happen a lot, or how do you kind of combat that?
Well, a lot of staying organized is changing your habits, right?
Yes.
It's impossible to set a system up for somebody and expect that they're going to be able to follow it to a T unless they already have that personality, right? Unless they're already an ultra organized person and they are motivated. Sometimes people are very motivated to keep it up, but to some degree, it has to be a flexible system that is going to change over time, because the things that we bring into our house change over time. It's never going to stay exactly as we leave it, right? So I think the secret to that is making the system flexible enough to change with the homeowner's needs over time. And then also teaching them the importance of continuously decluttering and going through things, right? You can't keep accumulating and expect the space not to overflow eventually if you're not also revisiting the stuff that you have and getting rid of it. So really, decluttering is honestly one of the biggest pieces of all of this, is if you're not continuously editing the amount of stuff that you have and what you're keeping in your house, it is going to eventually get out of control again. So really making sure that you're mindful of what you're keeping in your house and what you're bringing into your house.
And do you think that should be a quarterly thing, a yearly thing? I mean, where do you think people can keep up to date on it the most?
I think it depends on your shopping habits, right? And I don't think that you can put a time limit for every single person that's the same, because some people are getting new Amazon packages daily, or, they're getting stuff online.
My best friend. Yep.
Some people aren't big shoppers, right? And so I think when you start to feel like your space is getting cluttered again, that's a good indicator that it's time for you to go through some stuff. And honestly, it's a good motivator, because if it bothers you, it's going to be a little bit easier for you to take action on it when you've seen how good you feel when it's not like that. Even myself, I just cleaned out my basement the other day, and I find I have systems in place, but I still have to do it every single year. Without fail, I have to do it every year because more stuff gets brought into the house. And if you're not revisiting it, it can get out of control rather quickly. So it's just important to do it when you feel, and if it helps you to set a timer for yourself, figure out what feels manageable to you. If once a month is most likely going to be too stressful for most people. So I'd say you might need to stretch it out a little bit more if you find that that's too frequent.
Maybe change the seasons. That's 4 times a year. That should be easy.
Exactly.
And something I don't have children yet myself, but I know I have lots of friends with newborns, toddlers, even teenagers at home. And especially my friends with newborns or toddlers have a hard time with the toys because the families just every birthday, every Christmas, just give and give and give. Mm-hmm. And despite we don't need any more toys, we loved our loved ones, but sometimes they don't listen. So what advice would you give for someone with small kids at home to make it so it's not, oh my God, I'm living in Toys R Us at home because there's so much everywhere?
Yeah, I think that the biggest piece of that is being able to rotate toys out.
Oh, okay.
I have a 3-year-old at home and our playroom is essentially in our living room. So I don't want it to look out of control, right? It is the first thing you see when you enter the house, right? It's the centerpiece. So I have a zone of toys, and if it doesn't fit there, it is in a bin in the basement of toys that I rotate out. So when I notice my son is starting to get bored with his toys, and he's not taking new things out anymore, whatever, I'll go into the basement, grab the bin of toys, and I'll open it up and I'll say, hey, what do you want to play with? And we'll pick a few things out, and then I'll look and see what we have in the existing playroom and just pull out some things that I notice he hasn't played with in a while and put those in the bin to go in the basement. And what that does is a few things. One, it keeps them entertained because it's like getting a new toy. Like they remember it, sure, but they're excited about it again when they see it and they haven't seen it for a while.
Right.
And then it also forces you to look through those toys on a somewhat consistent basis. And you start to know when they're starting to, age out of some of those toys. So you can, if you have younger kids, that they're there for the younger kids to play with, or you can start donating them or selling them if, that chapter is over and you're ready to get rid of some of them. So it really helps you stay on top of that as well.
The rotation idea is so genius because, I get excited when I declutter my room and I'm like, oh, I forgot about this fun little notebook I bought one time 5 years ago that I threw under the bed or whatever. So that's a huge, huge, huge bit of advice. So what are we working on this year for the business, or where, because you have a pretty big team, I see, but what are you kind of working towards, or what kind of projects are you working for going into 2025?
Yeah, I would like to see us doing some more commercial jobs, working with more businesses. I love working with small business owners. It's so fun to be able to help them get their space in order, right? Small business owners are some of the people that need the most help because they're so busy. And when their businesses grow, they acquire more stuff and don't have the time or the knowledge to even realize the systems that need to be set up in advance. And so what happens is if they have an office space, there's usually a room of marketing supplies or, just a storage room that stuff just gets thrown into because they start acquiring it. They're just like, okay, yeah, great, it came in. Let me just throw it in there. And before they know it, they have a room floor to ceiling full of stuff, but they have no concept of what they have anymore. And even if they know that they have it, they don't know where to find it. And neither do their employees. So I love working with small business owners that have situations like that because we can really get them set up in a good way and label, the sections so anyone that's working there can learn the system. That's also a very instrumental piece, is teaching your employees and everybody in your house where things are and where they're supposed to go back so they can all follow the system as well. But that's what I would like to see us do more of this year.
Oh, amazing. Now, Kara, as we wrap this up, what advice do you have for listeners?
I think the biggest piece of advice is to not let imposter syndrome get in the way of what you want your next move to be, because everybody starts somewhere, and that somewhere is usually with very little experience. So no one knows exactly what that feels like except for you. And if you are trying hard and working at it and doing your part to learn about what you want to do, don't let the imposter syndrome of feeling like you don't know all the steps that you need to take get in your way, because you're going to learn them. If you're motivated to do it, you will figure out a way to make it happen.
Amazing. Now, if you're listening to this, you want to get your life in order personally or professionally, please reach out to Kara, head to the show notes, and tune in again next week for another episode of That's Business.
If you're looking for a career change and you're not sure where to start, the Resume Rescue can help. Sure, there's no such thing as the perfect fit for everyone, but here at the Resume Rescue, we're on a mission to find the perfect solution for you. Whether it's changing careers, updating a resume, learning LinkedIn, or practicing interviewing, we have you covered. Find us online at theresumerescue.com and find all of our contact info in our show notes.